Yurash here from Ukraine. I will introduce them briefly and then we'll turn the time over to them for their presentations. And we will close with, there'll be an opportunity for questions, so, but please hold your questions to the end. And when you ask your questions, we'd ask you to please stand and say your name and the country that you are from. It gives us a chance to understand each other, and if there's need for interpretation, it gives the interpreters a chance to come online. So Dr. Yelensky is a member of the Verkhovna Rada, the Ukrainian parliament. He's the head of the parliament's subcommittee for freedom of conscience. He has a master's degree in history from Kyiv State University and a candidate of science and doctor of science from the Institute of Philosophy of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. He has been a researcher and an editor for the Ukrainian Journal for Religious Studies. And he has headed the Kiev Bureau of Radio Liberty. And been a professor at the Ukrainian Catholic University and Diplomatic Academy of Ukraine. He is the author of many books and articles and essays on religious freedom, religion and politics, and global religious trends and transformations. His most recent book is called Great Comeback, Religion and Global Politics and International Relations. And we look forward to hearing from him. And Dr. Yurash is the director for the Department of Religious Affairs and Nationalities in the Ministry of Culture in Ukraine. He has a PhD in political science and is an associate professor at the Ivan Franko National University of Lviv, a member of the International Editorial Board of the journal Religion, State and Society, and of the Ukrainian Association of Religious Studies Scientists. He has a very impressive CV with many international presentations and publications. And he is the author of a book on Pope John Paul II. And he has, again, a very broad experience with international presentations on religion and government. And we will now turn the time over to Dr. Viktor Yelensky.
Thank you indeed. It's a great privilege to be here and to speak to you. And thank you to organizers, thank you to all who support this conference and who are interested in my country, which is now under the direct military aggression and under the direct military attack from the Russian Federation. Now, I'm going to speak about religious freedom in Ukraine. How I sound? It's good. About religious freedom in Ukraine. Probably many of you aware that Ukraine enjoys rather good standards in the sphere of religious freedom. You can see this index of government involvement in religion. The less, the better standards in religious freedom. And you can see that Ukraine has Ukraine score is 2.6, which is rather decent. Compared to Belarus, 6 and 1, and compare, for example, to tiny country of San Marino, which is 0.1. I deliberately didn't include some Asian countries, like Uzbekistan or Tajikistan, with awful standards in religious freedom, about 9 and some, 10 and some. But in the background of European country, you can see that Ukrainian standards are rather decent. What is the main reason for this? Main reason for this is religious pluralism, which is the main distinguishing feature of Ukrainian religious landscape and key for understanding the essence of socio-religious processes in my country. Several centers of religious power exist in Ukraine. These centers of power compete each other, and no one can dominate and suppress religious minorities and suppress smaller religion as in many neighboring countries. You can see in this picture members of Ukrainian Council for All Ukrainian Council for Churches and Religious Organization in Brussels 2 years ago. You also can see religious composition of Ukraine. No one of denomination in Ukraine exceeds 20 or 25%. So all these centers of main actors are comparable. No one can dominate and no one can suppress a religious minority. Despite the very fact of the acute competition between the largest churches, Ukrainian society is rather tolerant toward different religions and beliefs, and this is second main reason for religious freedom in Ukraine. You can see results of opinion poll where 74% of all questions says that any religion that proclaims ideals of virtue, love, mercy, and does not enlarge the existence of other people has the right to exist. And only the religion I confess is true, only 5% of questions. So, once again, two main reasons, religious pluralism and religious tolerance toward different religions, contribute to decent standards in religious sphere in Ukraine. These standards and this model of church-state relations were undermined by the regime of then President Viktor Yanukovych, who came to office in 2010. He has signaled his new religion policy in the very first day in presidential office. And the essence of President Yanukovych's religious policy lied in special relation with the Moscow Patriarchate and personally with Patriarch Kirill, discrimination of the Kiev Patriarchate, aversion of Greek Catholics, desire to control the church life, and strongly influence the political behavior of the clergy and religious leaders. Society immediately signaled about the deterioration of religious freedom. You can see index of restriction of religion, mid-2007, 26, and mid-2010, 4 and even. And you remember that the less, the better. Situation changed in 2014, but it's another story. In December the 1st, 2013, after the President Yanukovych rejected to sign association with European Union, massive rebellion or massive demonstration occurred in Kiev and started the revolution of dignity or Euro revolution. Religious associations, churches played crucial role in this revolution. Press felt that people need much more care than in normal times. They were willing to stand between protesters and riot police, to serve, to profess, and to comfort people in the bitter cold and among the flames. Dozens of protesters have found shelter within St. Michael Monastery of Kievan Patriarchate, prayerful standing between protesters and riot police on the railroad. This is a friend of mine, former Marine, now priest of Kievan Patriarchate, who trying to prevent a clash between protesters and police in December 2013. This is church hierarch, also during the Revolution of Dignity, convinced opposition leaders to start negotiation with President Yanukovych after bloodshed day of Ukrainian, during the day of Ukrainian unification, January 25, 2014. I'm on the probably here. So, after the assault of protesters on December 10, the community of the Ukrainian Catholic University has called for civil disobedience against the president and his government, and has proclaimed that after this night, to follow the orders of the government would be contrary to human conscience. It was unprecedented statement from the behalf of religious community in Ukraine. Another unprecedented statement went from the hierarchy of Kievan Patriarchate. After the shooting of protesters on February 20, 2014, the Holy Synod of the Kiev Patriarchate voted to suspend commemoration of the President and civil authorities of Ukraine during services in consequence of their use of firearms against the people who they had sworn to serve and to protect. After, as all of you are aware, after the fall of a regime of Yanukovych, immediately the aggression of Russian Federation started. During and after the annexation of Crimea, pro-Russian Cossacks expelled faithful of Kiev Patriarchate from their church buildings, and violation of human rights, religious freedom in Crimea jump on the enormous scale. Especially it hurt Crimean Tatars. You can see a funeral of Reshat Ametov, who was kidnapped by pro-Russian self-defense on March 3, 2014, and his body was found with numerous traces of violence. Persecution of Crimean Muslims now is very common in occupied Crimea. It includes Muslim activist house raids, vandalism against religious buildings, mosques, and holy sites. Ancient Muslim graves in Crimea are in danger. Crimean Tatar TV station is to be closed. Searches are carried out in so-called madrasa, Muslim schools for children. Mass conviction against imams, heads of religious schools occurred. Entry bans for leaders of Crimea Tatars Mustafa Jamilov and Rufat Chubarov, and so on and so forth. In March of 2014, following the Russian annexation of Crimea, Reform Rabbi Michael Kapustin of Simferopol was forced to leave Crimea after denouncing Russian actions. His synagogue had been defaced by a swastika, and a month later, vandals defaced Simferopol monument to more than 4,000 Jews killed by the Nazi in July 1942. Terrorists in occupied Donbass area actively deployed Orthodox rhetoric and Orthodox symbols. You can see in this picture terrorist from so-called Russian Orthodox Army, and emblem bears the inscription Orthodoxy Odess and Life for the Tsar. This is a list of prayer houses and church buildings seized by guerrillas of so-called Donetsk People Republic and Lugansk People Republic. Very impressive list. Mormons, Church, Jehovah's Witnesses, Kingdom, Halls of Kingdom, Pentecostals, Baptists, Charismatic, and this is pastor of Assembly of God, Sergei Kosyak, after he been arrested and tortured in so-called Donetsk People Republic. This is his back after so-called negotiation. And on June 8, 2014, after the festive Trinity Sunday service at the Transfiguration Church in Slavyansk, pro-Russian gunmen detained 4 members of the church. The men were brutally beaten and killed. Their bodies were found in a mass grave after the guerrillas had left the city and the Ukrainian army took the city over. On June 14, in a terrorist attack on a bridge in Mariupol, DNR guerrillas killed Sergei Skorobogach, a pastor of the church Renewal who chaired the council of church of this city, which is now under the control of Ukraine. Despite all these difficulties and all this problem on the front battle line with Russian Federation and pro-Russian guerrillas, Ukrainian parliament took very important steps toward religious freedom, strengthening religious freedom in Ukraine, and this is a list what done during the post-Maidan, post-revolution days or month. So, new law on higher education was adopted, which is very important for a religious school and universities. Parliament adopted law on prison chaplaincy. Government issued decree on military chaplaincy. Theology was recognized as an educational discipline. Amendments to the law of education allows church and religious organizations to establish public school and universities. Special tariffs for religious organization introduced. Tax exemption for religious organization, it's just the most important steps towards strengthening religious freedom on a legal basis. And now I believe Dr. Yurash followed this issue and will speak about particular issues of church-state relations in Ukraine, about legislation in Ukraine, and about changing situation in our country on the realm of religion and religious freedom. Thank you for your attention.
Dear friends and colleagues, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to talk to you here, and a very great introduction that was made by the moderator of this session. From one hand, it will be very easy to talk because I've had very good speakers before me that present the general trends during the last several years. And the second reason why it will be pretty easy to talk, because I can see here a lot of people, especially young people, who are really interested in the situation, know well the realities of the countries. But from other hand, it will be a little bit difficult because during the next 15 or 20 minutes will be really hard to explain the main trends of the situation, but I would like to concentrate on several general approaches to the situation in the country. We realize that the International Center for Law and Religious Studies of the BYU is always keep Ukrainian attention. And I participated in the previous 15 or even more years in around 10 different conferences in Ukraine dedicated to the topic of religious freedom. But a few years ago, I think, people in the center and around the world decided that Ukraine have reached some level of freedom that is enough and it will secure the situation on the pretty stable level. But the realities of the last at least 2 years show that the situation in the country is not so easier, and again we can see the general attention to the problem of the country. And we are very thankful for this general attention and attempts to understand and to help in keeping that pretty high level of religious freedom, as Professor Yelensky showed, on the general scale of how state authorities cover the issues of religion. For us, it's very important to keep this, even in this very dramatic situation, what we have now, what you saw on pictures, and I think you can read in different medias every day. For us, as a state official, as experts, colleagues from different areas in Ukraine, very important, even in this extreme situation, to keep this very pretty high level of freedom of religion that the country has achieved during the last 25 years of independent development. Our law on religious was adopted in 1991. 24 years ago, with some small addition in 1993. The reason why some new additions were added to the previously adopted law, because we had at that time pretty extreme situation. Instead of the situation that we have during the Soviet period, when just a few religious communities existed in the country, they were allowed to exist, actually. It wasn't the free situation when any community can reflect their needs and possibilities for free self-expression. Since the beginning of the 90s, we received a great variety of church religious identifications, and instead of this pretty limited number of community and religious groups that existed in the Soviet period, we received a great variety of religious organizations. And under these circumstances, it was a real challenge how to help to combine their objective and undisputable right to exist with the pretty modest at that time possibilities to use, for example, in one village the same buildings what existed at that time in the village. And in 1993, one very interesting and I think very prominent in the context of the contemporary situation addition was made to the Ukrainian law. If in one particular village there are several at least two communities that claim their desire to use the same state church building, and there are no other possibilities to serve the needs of these communities, local authorities can give this church building for a common use of these two or even several communities. Why I'm telling a little bit in several details about the situation what we had 20 years ago, because we are now standing again in a little bit similar situation. That time, at the beginning of 90s, we've had around 1,500 approximately number of conflict in different places, in different situations. But this conflict that appeared at that time was resolved pretty successfully according to the law, according to the implemented rules and of free existence and tolerance politics of the state. And for example, the great majority of the cases what we had at the time, more than 1,000 cases where we had a conflict, was resolved in the way when one of the community constructed a new building for themselves. But in around 300 of communities still follow the possibility of the law to use simultaneously by two or several communities the same church buildings. I'm telling, excuse me, repeating that again. Why? Because now we have, in some meaning, a similar situation. Similar because we are witnesses of the serious changes inside the society, what happened during the last 2 years. These changes happen in the political sphere of society, but exactly these political and social changes caused seriously the religious sphere as well. I'll just give a few examples. I always like many data, but I'll give just several. For example, 2 years ago, we had around 1/4 of the Ukrainian population supported Ukrainian alliance with the NATO. For now, just recent sociological data, 62%, so growth more than in 2 times of population support that Ukraine joined the NATO. The same with the European Union. Around 44% of population supported the signing association with the European Union 2 years ago. For now, it's a great majority of the population. Exactly, these changes in the general political identification of the population have caused real trends inside the religious communities. Professor Yelensky said and presented just very briefly the general figures about the situation. I would concentrate only on the most essential and important for us now situation inside the Orthodox community, because this community is the biggest one, and this community influences the general trends in the society. If to take the Orthodox community, around 44%, between 30 different data shows approximately the same number, between 38–44% support belonging to the Ukrainian Orthodox Church under the jurisdiction of Kyiv Patriarchate. And only around 20% support belonging and identification that express their belonging to the Moscow Patriarchate. For majority of people, these figures can be very paradoxical, because Moscow Patriarchate till now has much more number of parishes and congregations that are acting, but in 2 times less number of followers. It seems like incorrect figures or something wrong in a sociological investigation, but in fact it reflects the absolutely correct situation in the country, and it expresses the self-identification of the Orthodox believers. They express their real desire to belong to which of the Orthodox community, Orthodox jurisdiction for now. But this situation reflects also one, as for now, the most important trend what we are counting and can see in the society. that during last years, or a little bit more, around 100 Orthodox community decided to change their church affiliation. That's why I was talking in details about the situation 25 years ago, when we had a lot of changes inside the religious community. Now we are standing at the beginning of the same process, because it's going such important changes in the general perception by the people of their church affiliation. Among these 100 cases, what we can count, in approximately 1/3, these changes was made without any problems, and the entire community supported the new orientation and identification of the community. Around 1/3 decided split in approximately equal, 50% for 50%, and now they are resolving these cases in some courts. And in 1/3 of the cases, the great majority decided to change the situation, and a slight minority is trying to battle to keep the situation, to keep the church building. And this is objectively very serious factor in the country for destabilization, and that can be used by many figures, church leaders inside the society and outside the country, for describing, as they called, violation of the religious rights. But as for us, that's why I am concentrating, because I would like this, what kind of state official has to do in this situation when there is a possibility for free self-identification of the people. First of all, as for us, it seems it's also very important fact that supports the desire of the contemporary Ukrainian official to follow the concept of religious freedom and tolerance to different communities. This absolutely free desire of people. Okay, I'll be very short. According to the law and Article 8 of the law, any religious community can define themselves to which jurisdiction to belong. So the position of the state has to be to understand the objective trends of the development in the country, to realize a demand of this just mentioned article of the law for free, for possibility to free selection of the jurisdiction, to find forms of cooperation. In that case, there is a split inside the community with two parts of the community. And without any identification themselves with any groups inside the split community, to prevent any violence. Finally, just because I prepared a lot, but today we've heard at the first plenary session very interesting discussion about the role of religion in violence and in different situations. As for us, it's very visible that the role of religion has to be decided in two ways, exactly as a positive and at the same time controversial one. Without any details, I would like to emphasize one very important trend that Professor Yelensky described perfectly before me. Now we have a real opposition, we have a war in the country. But why did it happen? Because in some meaning, before this situation, we have some religious trends, some religious ideas that now some politics trying to realize and to implement on the practical political arena. What I mean? 5-6 years ago, Patriarch of Moscow declared this concept of, as he called, the Russian world. And exactly to this concept, Ukraine has to be a part of this Russian world. Ukrainian society didn't accept this concept. They was opposing, even the followers of Moscow Patriarchate in Ukraine. But this concept inspired a lot of people inside the Orthodox community, outside the Ukraine, and sometimes in specific region, to implement this religious concept on a practical way. So we are very aware about this correlation. Exactly, I can discuss in details, but many thanks for listening, and I hope that we are together with Professor Yelensky, we're able to present the general picture of the situation in the country. Thanks a lot.
Okay, we're grateful for those enlightening presentations, and we now have time to take questions. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand, and there is a microphone going around to those who would like to ask a question. As I said, please stand to ask your question and state your name and your country. Thank you.
This question is for Mr. Yurash. I had a sense in your presentation that you were about to look forward into the future and tell us a little bit about how you see things happening. I mean, you both did a wonderful job of talking about the past and how things have come to the present. And I wonder if you could comment a little bit on what you see happening over the next little while, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, to sort out some of the issues that are within the religious communities there.
Right.
Either one.
Mm-hmm. We're sitting here, yeah? Yeah. I think we can think about the several trends of the development for the next few years. First of all, the Ukrainian state will make everything possible to keep the same level of tolerance and recognition of any communities that we have for now. And I hope, I believe that the people who visited Ukraine, especially the young missionaries who spent some time in the country, can confirm that. Secondly, I was trying to give some data and to show that some changes inside particular community will go for sure. I mean, it will be the absolutely objective trends. Trends when majority of Orthodox people would like to belong to the Orthodox Church under jurisdiction of Kyiv Patriarchate, they will try to do everything possible to realize in practice level their theoretical, ideological, identificational priorities, what we have now. So it's we will see much more, I think, cases when some Orthodox community will change their jurisdictions, and exactly it will be challenge for Ukraine, because we will try to combine a possibility for free development for both communities, if it happens split. And in this sense, I think we will be trying to develop, as it's called, Estonian variant of the situation inside the Orthodox community, when we would like to see at least 2 canonical Orthodox jurisdictions inside the country. One under jurisdiction of Moscow Patriarchate. We will cover and will serve for people who decided to stay with the previous identification. And at the same time, I think we will have a new influence jurisdiction that maybe can be recognized by other Orthodox churches, which is not done yet, and will be in autocephalous, so independent state, and will serve for people who declare right now the big majority this church identificational concept. Thank you.
Add some probably ideas and speculate over next 1, 2, or 3 years. First of all, every single day, Ukrainian legislation became more and more close to European one. Ukrainian Parliament has special program and special agenda to approach step by step to European legislation. It means that religious freedom would be more strength and more would have more support, legal support than we have now. But at the same time, it's a challenge for Ukrainian churches because even now, currently, some churches protested against the same-sex marriages and some liberal trends in European legislation. Another probably trend we can across during the next 1, 2, or 3 years would be the continuation of rise of patriotism among Ukrainian churches. On the margin of this conference, we, together with Dr. Yurash, had a quick conversation with one of the participants of this conference, who said that primate of one of the largest Ukrainian church is too nationalistic. He said he's too nationalistic. But I suggest him to wear his shoes of this primate. His folk and his flock are under the attack, and he has to speak openly and openly mark this position with whom he is, with Russian Church, who support without any objections aggression against Ukraine, or with Ukrainian state, with soldiers who return from the battle line and need care and need comfort from the church and so forth. And probably third visible trend for me, it's common agenda which would elaborate within the Council of Church, Ukrainian Council of Church, and the religious organization. This common agenda would exceed the barrier of confessional differences. That is, in my opinion, 3 main trends for next 2-3 years.
My question will be in Russian, so if those of you who need earphones, please put them on. The question will be asked in Russian, yes, and those who need translation, please put your earphones on. Vladimir Machalov.
Vladimir Machalov, I'm from Moscow. My question to both representatives of the Ukraine. During the last 15-20 years, we can see a positive, negative correlation between religious organizations and government of Ukraine, and it's good news. Mr. Yurash shared some positive changes in light of self-identification of Ukrainian people. My question is dealing with, in light of this tight relationship, how much in Ukrainian country, in Ukrainian society, what about the church marriage? Do you even discuss this issue? Such initiatives, are they being discussed among religious organizations. And Mr. Yelensky, maybe you know some details when it comes to certain political forces of the current regime in Ukraine. Thank you.
I can answer in Russian as well. So, ну,
this topic is not a priority for both the religious community in Ukraine and for religious situation overall in Ukraine. It emerges somewhere on the outskirts. This problem needs to be discussed in the context of the overall. When we discuss the concept of the relationship between the church and state, and it's a very important topic right now. And in this regard, we need to find the points that will be symbolic, that will have meaning for the church. If this question of church marriage will be poised from the majority of religious organizations, then we will find some forms to discuss this question on all levels. For example, church organizations were discussing the possibility of building church schools. And Viktor Yelensky, as a deputy, as a parliamentary, did everything to put this practice into reality. This is old now. If the council of all religious organizations in Ukraine will raise this question will have to be moved to legislature, and there will be bills adopted and maybe laws, and then it will become reality. If you want me to answer briefly, we're talking about religious marriage and its acknowledgement by the state. It touches the basis of the constitution of Ukraine and the problem of separation of church and state. In Ukraine, there's no one solution what is the separation of church and state. I think if we talk about the initiatives that exist in our parliament, it is evident. One of the initiatives, we need 1/3 of the parliament. 1/3 of the parliament need to address the constitutional court, so that the constitutional court will explain what is separation of church and state. Does it mean that government cannot finance certain projects by the religious organization, what is called in USA faith-based initiative? Does it mean that government cannot delegate church the right to act to officiate in a marriage? This initiative will, I think, it will soon be realized. Couple words when it comes to separation of church and state and education. Church is separated from the state. According to constitution, it's separate. We have to talk about a very wide how we understand separation of church and state when it comes to current realities. Religious organizations have new demands, and at the same time government institutions.
My name is Blair Garf, and my country is New York. So large and diverse. What has happened with your colleagues in Crimea, and what is the state of any kind of religious freedom in Crimea at this time?
As I told previously, there is a very brutal violation of religious freedom in Crimea. Not because of Russian legislation much more restrictive toward religious organization or religious freedom as such, but treat Russian occupation authorities in Crimea treats religious minorities, Kievan Patriarchate, Muslim communities in very brutal manner. In very brutal manner, we have all list of this violation, and time to time we send this list of violation to European Court. It's briefly, and I can list very incredible cases about violation of religious freedom in Crimea, not to say about occupied territory in Donbass.
What is the state right now, though?
The state that is such. Lion majority of religious community in Crimea are not re-registered according to Russian law and are under the threat. Some religious centers of in Crimea, I mean diocese centers or Muslim centers, religious schools, and so on, are under the threat. Many religious leaders are expelled from Crimea. So many of them are let's say in exile. Excuse me? In exile. So the situation is really bad.
I will add just a few figures. According to Ukrainian law, at the beginning of 2014 in Crimea were registered 2,085 communities. Around 7,500 were acting without state registration because it's allowed according to the. All this more than 2,000 communities were forced to register, and for the figures several months ago, just around 60 communities has received the Russian registration. You can imagine how big violations of the right, and especially for those communities that were not registered, especially for the Crimean Tatars. It's a very difficult situation because they were forced to accept the Russian registration because of the artificial structure was created immediately, so-called Taurian Muftiyat, and if it's Muftiyat of Crimean Tatar will not be agreed to register according to the Russian law, this new artificial structure will take care about the communities. And now, just yesterday, we announced by the Crimean Tatars in Ukraine that the spiritual center for them will be re-established in Ukraine again. One more question.
Thanks. Слышно, да?
Can you hear me?
My name is Arkady Dubnov. I am from Russia, and Moscow is my country. My question is very short. What do you think about problem of religious extremism and fundamentalism in Ukrainian? Have you this problem?
I will be also brief as well. Yeah, exactly. We have, and Viktor Yelensky already showed a few examples of these extremist groups who were acting in, for example, in areas where we have now the war in the eastern part of the country. For example, this so-called Russian Orthodox Army, that is a real extremist organization, and exactly we paid a lot of attention to that because we have to understand the real difference between the extremist groups and ideologies and between the free will and the free self-identification of the people. I'm very brief because we are out of time.
Exhausted.
Well, thank you all for... I'm afraid we're out of time. Perhaps if you have questions, you can ask them sort of individually to Dr. Yurash and Dr. Yelensky, but we need to stay on schedule. Thank you so much for your presentations, for your information, and we'll proceed from here.
Thank you.
Thank you.